The signal came first. It was a deep, resonant pulse that every radio telescope on Earth caught at the same time. No encryption, no code, just a single, deafening presence on every frequency. It was the cosmic equivalent of a god clearing its throat before speaking. And then, hours later, they arrived. The fleet emerged from the void beyond Neptune, slipping into the Sol system like predators circling a wounded prey. Thousands of warships, massive beyond comprehension, hovered into formation. The largest among them, the Zaraketh, a command dreadnought the size of a small moon, cast a shadow over Saturn's rings as it moved inward. By the time their ships reached Mars' orbit, the United Earth Council had convened in Geneva. Every world leader, every top military official, every mind capable of understanding what was happening was gathered in the most secretive, high-level meeting humanity had ever held. But the truth was simple, undeniable. The VA carried Dominion had come. The broadcast followed soon after, sent in flawless English, Chinese, Russian, Arabic, and every major language known to mankind. A single, imperious figure, humanoid but taller and more angular than any human, stood in the center of a holographic projection. His skin was a shade of violet, with eyes like burning embers set deep in his face. He wore armor so intricately woven with gold and black metals that it seemed to shimmer with an unnatural energy. "I am High Chancellor Vorex of the VA Dominion," he intoned. His voice carried a weight beyond simple words. It was the voice of an empire that had spoken these same words to thousands of other species, countless times before. "You stand at a crossroads." The room in Geneva fell silent. "Humanity," Vorex continued, "you have been found. The Dominion extends to you the same offer given to all who stand before us. You may join the great order that has ruled this galaxy for over 1,000,000 of your years. You will surrender your world, your leadership, and your military to our will. You will accept our governance, our laws, and our command. And in return, you will live." No one spoke. Vorex's burning eyes flickered. "Or, if you choose to resist, know this. The Dominion has not been defeated in 1,000 millennia. We have erased entire civilizations, shattered their fleets, and burned their worlds to ash. Your species will be no different. You will fall as they fell." Then, the final words, delivered with the indifference of a god looking down upon ants. "Surrender or be annihilated." The transmission ended. The silence that followed was suffocating. President Eleanor Hargraves of the United Americas was the first to speak. Her voice was steady, but the tension behind it was impossible to ignore. "We need to consider the possibility of negotiation," she said. General Marcus Voss of the Global Defense Initiative slammed his fist on the table. "Negotiate? Did you hear them? That wasn't a peace offering. That was a death sentence wrapped in a pretty speech. They are too powerful," said Chancellor Wei Long of the Asian Coalition. "Their technology is beyond us. Even if we fight, what could we possibly do against them? We've fought impossible wars before," said Prime Minister Anwar Patel of the European Federation. "We've won against enemies who had every advantage. This is no different." Voss scoffed. "It's completely different. These aren't humans with better guns. These are beings with a 1,000,000-year head start. And you propose what?" Hargraves asked. "Surrender." The word hung in the air like a disease. Then, from the far end of the table, a quiet voice spoke. Dr. Luciana Ortega, head of the Joint Space Research Initiative, leaned forward. "We don't know what we can do yet," she said. "But I know one thing. If we surrender, we'll never get the chance to find out." The room fell silent again. This time there was something different about it. A decision was made that day, not through a vote, not through consensus, but through the unspoken resolve of every leader at that table. Humanity would not kneel. The VA gave Earth 3 days to decide. They never expected resistance. On the second day, humanity struck first. A coalition of Earth's last remaining orbital defense fleets, outdated warships, repurposed space stations, even experimental railgun satellites, launched a desperate attack against the nearest VA battleship. The strike force was laughably outmatched. The VA carry warships' shields absorbed the first wave of nuclear detonations without even flinching. Their counterattack lasted exactly 12 seconds. Every human vessel was obliterated. The first battle of the war was over before it even began. But humanity did not stop. Across the planet, emergency war councils were formed. Scientists scrambled to find weaknesses in VA carry technology. Hackers began probing their transmissions, seeking cracks in their security. Military strategists studied battle footage, analyzing every move the enemy made. And in the shadows, a new kind of war was already beginning, one the VA carry did not anticipate. On the dawn of the third day, the VA carry made their move. Their fleet descended upon Earth with the precision of a well-rehearsed execution. Beams of energy carved through the sky, reducing entire cities to molten craters. Shock troops landed in the remains, their exoskeletal armor deflecting bullets as they advanced like walking gods. Within hours, half of Earth's major cities were under siege. In Geneva, the Council watched in horror as live feeds showed the fall of New York, Beijing, Moscow, and Johannesburg. "This isn't war," Patel whispered. "This is extermination." Hargraves turned to Voss. "We need a new plan." He clenched his jaw. "We fight. Not like them. Not like soldiers standing in a battlefield." He looked at the others. "We fight dirty." Thus, the resistance was born. The sky was burning. Across the planet, the VA carry invasion unfolded like a preordained execution. Their warships hovered in low orbit, casting long, ominous shadows over the ruins of human cities. Plasma bombardments left nothing but scorched earth where once stood monuments of human civilization. The war hadn't just begun, it had already been lost. Or at least, that was what the VA carry believed. New York was the first to collapse. The city's defenders, a mix of what remained of the National Guard and hastily armed civilians, were no match for the VA carry shock troopers. The invaders moved with terrifying precision, their exoskeletal armor absorbing bullets, their weapons reducing entire buildings to rubble with a single shot. On every channel, the reports were the same. London's government district had been vaporized. Moscow's last line of defense had fallen under a relentless assault. Beijing was in flames. Johannesburg reduced to nothing but craters. Sydney lost. Within the first 48 hours, the war became a massacre. Human forces, even the best-equipped military units, could do nothing against the sheer technological superiority of the VA carry. Tanks were turned into molten slag by directed energy weapons. Fighter jets were obliterated before they could even lock onto a target. Nuclear missile silos were detected and disabled before launch sequences could be completed. The world governments collapsed one by one. Leaders vanished, some taken as prisoners, others executed, some simply gone without a trace. The United Earth Council ceased to function, its emergency bunkers discovered and breached with ease. Humanity's supposed leaders had no time to surrender. To the VA carry, the war was over. But to humanity, it was just beginning. The underground bunker beneath Geneva had been designed to withstand anything Earth could throw at it. Nuclear blasts, biochemical attacks, even asteroid impacts. But no one had prepared for this. The survivors of the United Earth Council gathered in what was left of the command center, their faces illuminated by red emergency lighting. Screens flickered with static, occasional bursts of footage showing the devastation above. "This is it," Prime Minister Anwar Patel said grimly, watching as live drone footage showed the VA carry forces closing in. "We are the last ones left." "No," General Marcus Voss said. "There are others." Hargraves turned to him. "We have no army left." "We don't need an army," Voss growled. "We need something else. We need a war they aren't expecting." Outside, the VA carry shock troops descended on Geneva, their formations perfect, their assault inevitable. The last government outpost of humanity was about to be crushed. Inside the bunker, however, a new war was being planned. When Geneva fell, the world assumed that was the end. There was no formal surrender, no white flag, just silence. But scattered across the ruins of Earth, pockets of survivors refused to die. In the ruins of New York, a group of engineers and cyber warfare specialists hijacked a disabled VA carry recon drone, managing to gain access to the enemy's communication network for a brief moment before being detected. In the mountains of South America, remnants of elite military units, U.S. Navy SEALs, Russian Spetsnaz, Chinese Special Forces, began striking at VA carry patrols, using the terrain to their advantage. In the underground tunnels of London, scientists salvaged pieces of VA carry technology, attempting to reverse engineer their weapons. And in the shattered wasteland of Geneva, General Voss emerged from the ruins, leading what remained of Earth's military leadership. They had no army, no government, no hope. But they had something the VA carry had never encountered before: guerrilla warfare. For the first time in 1,000 millennia, the unstoppable Vicary Dominion faced an enemy that did not fight with fleets and armies. Humanity had lost the war of open battle, but they were about to wage a different kind of war, one fought in the shadows, in the ruins, in the minds of the enemy itself. And unlike every other species that had bowed before the Dominion, humanity refused to kneel. 2 weeks after the fall of Geneva, the first successful human counterattack took place in the remains of Tokyo. A VA carry supply convoy moved through the ruins, escorted by 2 squads of heavily armed soldiers. The Dominion had no concept of resistance. No species had ever been foolish enough to fight after losing their planet. The convoy moved without caution, without fear. They never saw the humans waiting beneath the wreckage. When the explosives went off, the lead transport was flipped into the air like a child's toy. Gunfire erupted from the shadows, bullets slamming into weak points in VA carry armor. Snipers, using scavenged weapons, targeted their exposed joints. The ambush was swift, brutal, and most importantly, successful. By the time the battle ended, every VA carry soldier was dead, their corpses stripped of weapons and armor. The resistance had won its first victory. The VA carry barely noticed. They viewed it as a minor inconvenience, nothing more than a statistical anomaly. They were wrong. Humanity adapted faster than the VA carry expected. Within months, resistance cells spread across the planet, striking at key supply routes, assassinating officers, sabotaging VA carry infrastructure. The Dominion had never faced such warfare before. They were used to overwhelming force, planetary bombardments, instant surrenders. They had no defense against an enemy that refused to fight them directly. What was once an easy conquest became something else: an insurgency, a war of shadows, of stolen technology, of hacked communications and infiltrated bases. The VA carry, for the first time in their long history, had underestimated an enemy. And now, the war they thought they had already won was spiraling into something they had never faced before. The war for Earth had begun. The VA carry Dominion had ruled for over 1 million years. Their technology was unmatched, their fleets invincible, their military doctrine simple: overwhelming force and absolute subjugation. No species had ever resisted them for long. Until now, humanity, outnumbered, outgunned, and on the verge of extinction, had found its one advantage: adaptability. They could now fight the VA carry in open battle. But they didn't have to. They would steal from them, learn from them, and turn their own weapons against them. The attack on the Tokyo convoy was just the beginning. The resistance, once scattered and desperate, had begun to reorganize. Old military commanders, black market tech specialists, and rogue AI engineers had come together to form something new, a coordinated force capable of striking at the VA carry where they least expected. Their first major target? A VA carry scout corvette docked outside the ruins of Houston. The Zaltour was a small ship by VA carry standards, no larger than an Earth battleship, but it was still an impenetrable fortress of alien engineering. Its shields alone could withstand nuclear blasts. Its weapons could incinerate entire battalions in seconds. No human vessel stood a chance against it in open combat. So the resistance didn't attack it in open combat. Instead, a team of former cyber warfare specialists and spec ops soldiers infiltrated the docking station. They moved in the dead of night, using stolen VA carry identification codes hacked from earlier ambushes. They weren't warriors. They were thieves, scavengers, survivors. Inside the ship, the Hfy crew barely noticed their presence. The Dominion's arrogance had blinded them. No species had ever attempted something so foolish. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. The Resistance team had hijacked the ship's command system, overriding the security protocols using a combination of brute force hacking and old-school sabotage. Engines roared to life. Docking clamps released. And before the Hfy could react, the Zaltor lifted off, its new pilot's human. The first stolen Hfy warship had fallen into enemy hands. Stealing the Zaltor was only the first step. Using it was another matter entirely. The ship's systems were designed for Hfy physiology. Its controls responded to their neural interfaces. Its language was indecipherable to human operators. Every piece of technology inside was alien in ways even the brightest human minds struggled to comprehend. But humanity had spent centuries learning how to adapt. A group of scientists and engineers, led by Dr. Luciana Ortega, worked day and night inside an underground bunker beneath what remained of Colorado. They tore apart the ship's systems, mapping its power sources, deciphering its weapons, and, most importantly, finding ways to use them. At first, progress was slow. Human pilots couldn't interface with Hfy neural systems. The energy cores were unstable. The ship itself resisted any attempt at manual control. Then, someone had an idea. If humans couldn't use Hfy tech directly, they would build bridges between them. They spliced old human software into the ship's systems, creating a hybrid interface that allowed manual operation. They rewired power grids, modified energy weapons, and adapted the Hfy's targeting systems for human use. It was messy, inefficient, and dangerous. But it worked. The first battle-ready, human-controlled Hfy warship was born. While scientists were dismantling Hfy hardware, hackers were doing the same to their digital infrastructure. For all their power, the Hfy had one major flaw. They had never needed to defend against an enemy who fought with deception. Their systems were built for absolute control, not countermeasures. Their communication networks were centralized, their security protocols outdated by human standards. A team of rogue AI developers, former intelligence operatives, and underground hackers found ways to infiltrate Hfy systems, planting false messages, rerouting supply convoys, and even disabling automated defenses. They discovered something horrifying in the process. The Hfy kept records of every species they had conquered, every planet they had raised, every civilization they had wiped from existence. The database stretched back 1,000,000 years. Humanity wasn't the first to fight, but they would be the first to win. The true test of humanity's stolen technology came during the Battle of Titan. The Hfy had turned Saturn's largest moon into a command outpost, a staging ground for their continued conquest of Earth. The base was heavily fortified, with orbital defenses capable of obliterating any human attack before it even got close. But the Resistance had the Zaltor, and they had a plan. Using their hacked communication networks, Resistance operatives sent false orders to the Hfy fleet, redirecting patrols, disabling key security systems, and planting misinformation about an imminent attack on Mars. While the Hfy scrambled to reinforce Mars, a single ship, the Zaltor, slipped past their defenses and landed on Titan. A strike team disembarked, planting explosives at key facilities, sabotaging power grids, and planting viruses in the command systems. By the time the Hfy realized what was happening, half their base was in flames. Humanity had just dealt its first major blow to the Dominion. The Titan raid changed everything. For the first time in their long history, the Hfy faced an enemy that could steal their weapons, break their codes, and turn their own tactics against them. The Dominion High Council convened an emergency session, an event that had not happened in over 10,000 years. "We miscalculated," High Chancellor Vorex admitted, his face twisted in something that almost resembled frustration. "The humans are not like the others." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. "They are beneath us," one scoffed. "A lesser species cannot." Vorex slammed his fist against the table. They have stolen our ships. They have infiltrated our systems. They have won battles. Would you call that the work of a lesser species? Silence. They are not like the others, Vorex repeated. And that makes them dangerous. The council voted. The war would escalate. No more mercy. No more waiting. The full might of the Dominion would descend upon Earth. But the humans had already learned too much. And the war they thought was already won had only just begun. The Dominion had never faced an enemy like humanity. They had fought wars against countless species, crushed rebellions, obliterated civilizations. They had conquered the galaxy through sheer technological superiority, their vast empire stretching across thousands of star systems. But this war was different. Humanity was different. The VA carry had expected surrender. They had expected fear. They had expected another species to kneel before them, as had every other civilization before. What they had not expected was a war that refused to end. And for the first time in millennia, the VA carry war machine was beginning to stall. The Dominion's first mistake was underestimating humanity's ability to adapt. The second mistake was underestimating humanity's ability to endure. Months after the Titan raid, the Resistance had grown into something more than scattered survivors. They had transformed into a fully operational shadow army, using stolen VA carry technology, cyber warfare, and guerrilla tactics to disrupt the Dominion's hold on Earth. What was meant to be a swift and decisive conquest had turned into a logistical nightmare. Supply convoys vanished without a trace, hijacked by human strike teams. Communications between Dominion fleets were compromised, forcing them to use slower, less efficient methods of coordination. Planetary occupation forces found themselves under siege, hunted in the very cities they thought they had conquered. The VA carry were stronger, but humanity was smarter. And with every skirmish, every ambush, every successful raid, humanity learned more about VA carry weaknesses, about their tactics, about how to win. News of the Titan raid spread quickly. The Dominion tried to suppress it, branding it an isolated incident, a minor setback. But whispers carried across the Empire. For the first time in 1,000 millennia, the VA carry had lost a battle. And the VA carry were not the only ones who noticed. Across the Dominion, enslaved species, some who had suffered under VA carry rule for centuries, began to watch. Some even dared to hope. And in the dark corners of the galaxy, where VA carry rule was strongest, rebellions began to stir. It was a ripple effect the Dominion had never accounted for. The war was no longer just about Earth. It was becoming something bigger. Victory on Titan was proof that humanity could fight back. But without unity, Earth would never survive. General Marcus Voss understood this better than anyone. He had been a soldier before the war. He had seen what happened when nations fought amongst themselves, when political squabbles weakened armies, when bureaucrats slowed down decision-making. There could be no more politics, no more separate factions. Humanity needed a leader, a warrior, a strategist. And whether he wanted it or not, Voss became that leader. Under his command, the scattered resistance forces merged into a single military operation, coordinating attacks, pooling resources, and forging alliances between survivalist groups, rogue scientists, and even former criminals who had once thrived in the underground world of cybercrime and black market technology. There were no sides anymore, only humanity. The Dominion's war machine was vast, powerful, and unrelenting. And now it was angry. Vorex had argued for patience, for overwhelming force used with surgical precision. But the High Council had no patience left. Humanity had humiliated the Dominion. And now, Earth had to burn. The decision was made, Operation Final Eclipse. No more occupations. No more negotiations. No more mercy. The Dominion's planetary annihilation fleet was mobilized. The strategy was simple. Reduce Earth to an uninhabitable wasteland, leave nothing but fire and ash, and erase humanity from history. It was the same strategy they had used countless times before. But this time, something was different. This time, the VA carry were not the only ones preparing for war. As the VA carry fleet prepared for the final purge of Earth, something unprecedented happened. From the depths of Vicary-controlled space, a message was intercepted, not from the Dominion, but from a species that had once been conquered by them. The message was brief, encoded in an ancient dialect long thought lost. One word: resist. And with it came coordinates, a hidden stronghold, a secret world where an ancient Valkyrie enemy had been waiting, watching, preparing. For the first time in recorded history, the Dominion faced something it had never encountered before: an alliance against them. The war that had started as the conquest of a single, insignificant planet was now spiraling into something far greater. The Valkyrie had ruled the stars for over 1,000,000 years, and now, for the first time, they faced the one thing they had never expected: a revolution. With stolen warships, hacked technology, and new allies emerging from the darkness, humanity was no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. The final battle for Earth was coming, and it would not end the way the Valkyrie expected. The Valkyrie Dominion had fought wars for over 1,000,000 years. They had crushed countless civilizations, erased entire species, and ruled the galaxy through absolute dominance. But they had never fought a war like this. Humanity had been written off as just another primitive race, another footnote in the Dominion's long history of conquest. Now, the High Council was forced to reconsider. This war was no longer a simple occupation. It was a struggle for survival for both sides. And humanity, once a species fighting just to endure, had now become the architects of a rebellion unlike anything the Valkyrie had ever faced. The intercepted message had changed everything. For centuries, the Valkyrie had ruled through fear. Their empire was built on subjugation, their power absolute. No species had dared to rise against them. But humanity's defiance had sparked something new. The message, resist, had come from a species long thought extinct, a race the Valkyrie had conquered thousands of years ago. The Zeren, a race of brilliant strategists and bioengineers, had survived in hiding, waiting for the day when the Dominion would face an enemy they could not easily crush. That day had come. Deep in an uncharted system, the Zeren had built hidden war factories, storing weapons and ships they had secretly developed for generations. They had been waiting for a species strong enough, desperate enough, to fight the Valkyrie the way they needed to be fought. Humanity was that species. Voss, Ortega, and the resistance leaders made contact, and an alliance was forged. Humanity brought tactical ingenuity, adaptability, and sheer determination. The Zeren provided technology, weapons, and knowledge of the Valkyrie's hidden weaknesses. Together, they would change the war forever. The Valkyrie were not just conquerors. They were genetically superior, or so they believed. Their biology had been perfected over millions of years, their immune systems nearly impenetrable, their bodies resistant to disease. They had never faced a biological threat they couldn't neutralize. Until now, the Zeren were masters of genetic warfare, and with human ingenuity, they devised a virus unlike anything the Valkyrie had ever encountered. Not a plague, not a weapon of mass extinction. Something smarter, a genetic disruptor designed to target the neural pathways that allowed Valkyrie soldiers to sync with their technology. For the first time in their history, the Valkyrie's own evolution became a liability. The virus spread silently, infiltrating Dominion outposts, disabling warships, causing elite soldiers to lose control of their own weapons. It wasn't a disease. It was a revolution hidden inside their own DNA. And the Valkyrie had no cure. While the virus weakened their soldiers, humanity's cyber warfare division launched a second attack. Every warship, every facility, every communication network in the Dominion ran on a system designed for absolute security. But security was built on predictability. The Valkyrie had never fought an enemy that thought like humanity. Resistance hackers, AI specialists, and rogue engineers launched a digital war unlike anything the Dominion had faced. They didn't just disrupt enemy systems. They took control. False orders were transmitted across the Dominion's fleet. Entire warships turned against their own. Defense grids shut down in key locations. Weapons malfunctioned at critical moments. The Valkyrie's greatest strength, their interconnected military machine, had become their greatest weakness. And now, the war was no longer one-sided. The Dominion had one answer to rebellion: total annihilation. When they discovered the source of the cyber attacks and the growing resistance fleet, they launched a counterstrike on Europa, the moon that had become a hidden base for the uprising. A fleet of Valkyrie dreadnoughts descended upon the icy moon, their weapons primed to wipe out the resistance in one decisive strike. But humanity was ready. The Battle of Europa became the first full-scale war fought between humanity and the Valkyrie as equals. Valkyrie warships fell to their own hacked systems. Human pilots, flying hybrid Valkyrie human fighters, engaged in dogfights against their former masters. The biological virus disrupted enemy forces mid-battle, turning elite soldiers into liabilities. For the first time, humanity didn't just survive, they won a full-scale battle against the Valkyrie fleet. The Dominion's greatest fear was becoming reality. Humanity was no longer fighting a losing war. They were fighting for victory. In the aftermath of the Europa battle, something happened that had not occurred in over 10,000 years. The Valkyrie High Council began to fracture. For millions of years, the Dominion had been united under the belief in their own invincibility. But now, as warships burned and their genetic superiority was challenged, doubt spread like a virus among the ruling elite. Some demanded total extermination of humanity. Some argued for retreat, fearing that the war was costing too much. Some whispered of negotiations, something the Valkyrie had never considered before. And some, in the shadows, began plotting against their own leaders. Humanity had not only fought the Valkyrie, they had begun to break them from within. With the Zarin alliance, stolen technology, cyber warfare, and the first ever Valkyrie defectors, humanity launched its first full-scale offensive against the Dominion itself. The war, once confined to Earth, was now spreading to the stars. Resistance fleets, composed of hybrid human Valkyrie warships, attacked key Dominion strongholds. Cyber warriors unleashed virus after virus, crippling entire sectors of the enemy's infrastructure. Defections among the Valkyrie increased as more began to question the war itself. And at the heart of it all, Earth was no longer the hunted. Humanity was no longer a species fighting to survive. They were an uprising unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Valkyrie Dominion had ruled for over 1,000,000 years. And now, for the first time, they were losing. With the Dominion's fleets weakened, their leaders divided, and their own weapons turned against them, humanity prepared for the final phase of the war. Not just survival, not just defiance. Victory. Earth was no longer the battlefield. Now, the war was heading straight for the Valkyrie homeworld itself. And this time, it would be humanity who delivered the ultimatum. The war had lasted for nearly a century. What was meant to be a swift conquest had become a nightmare for the Valkyrie Dominion. Humanity had fought with nothing but sheer willpower, stolen technology, and relentless ingenuity. And now, they were no longer just surviving. They were winning. The Valkyrie had never suffered such losses. Their fleets were fractured, their supply chains severed, their communications compromised. For the first time in 1,000,000 years, the Dominion's war machine was crumbling. And now, humanity was preparing to strike at the very heart of the Empire. The resistance had evolved into something more. No longer just scattered guerrilla fighters, humanity now commanded a full-fledged war fleet, built from stolen Valkyrie dreadnoughts, hacked defense grids, and hybrid warships that combined alien energy weapons with human strategic unpredictability. They were ready for the final assault. Their target, Valkyrie Prime, the homeworld of the Dominion itself. The plan was insane. No species had ever dared to attack the Valkyrie capital. Its defenses were legendary. Planetary shields that had never been breached, orbital fortresses the size of moons, entire fleets stationed in permanent orbit. It was a fortress, but humanity had never played by the rules. As the Resistance prepared their assault, something unthinkable happened. A Valkyrie high-ranking commander defected. His name was Archon Vatan, a member of the Dominion's ruling elite. For centuries, he had fought for the Hfy without question, believing in their absolute supremacy. But humanity had changed everything. He had seen his own soldiers fall to human cyber warfare. He had watched entire fleets crippled by guerrilla strikes. He had witnessed the unthinkable, Hfy warriors surrendering, refusing to fight, questioning the war. The Dominion had ruled for over 1 million years. But now, for the first time, Vatan saw its end. And so, he did the unthinkable. He turned against his own people. Vatan brought something priceless to the resistance: intimate knowledge of the Dominion's inner workings, the weaknesses of their shield grids, the hidden vulnerabilities in their command structure, the secrets that had kept the Dominion invincible for 1 million years. With his help, humanity had a chance, not just to fight, but to end the war forever. The invasion began with a deception unlike anything the Hfy had ever faced. Resistance hackers, using infiltrated Dominion command codes, triggered a false alert across the outer sectors of the Empire, a fabricated distress signal that convinced the remaining Hfy fleets that Earth was preparing for a massive counterattack. It was a lie. The Dominion diverted its remaining warships away from Hfy Prime, expecting an attack that would never come. And in that moment of weakness, humanity struck at their homeworld. The first planetary shield collapsed within minutes. Hacked from the inside, its command relays overridden by resistance operatives who had been infiltrating Hfy systems for decades. Humanity's fleet, a ragtag force of stolen warships, cyber-enhanced drones, and pilots trained in both human and Hfy tactics, descended upon the capital. The sky burned with war. Hfy warships turned against each other, their systems corrupted by human cyber warfare. Human strike teams infiltrated the Dominion's ruling chambers, assassinating high-ranking officials and sowing chaos. Zarin bioweapons spread through the Hfy capital, disabling their soldiers and rendering their elite forces useless. The Dominion had never been invaded before. They had never even considered the possibility. Now their empire was collapsing from the inside out. At the heart of Hfy Prime, High Chancellor Vorax made his final stand. For 1 million years, he had ruled the Dominion with absolute authority. He had watched civilizations fall, species kneel before him, entire worlds burn at his command. He had believed in Hfy supremacy, in their divine right to rule the galaxy. And yet, as he stood in the burning ruins of his capital, watching his own people flee in terror, he finally understood. Humanity had done the impossible. They had defied history. Vorax faced General Voss in the heart of the Dominion's war chamber. The human leader stood before him, battered but unbroken, his eyes filled not with hatred, but with victory. Vorax refused to surrender. But in the end, he didn't have a choice. With a single, final shot, one last act of defiance from humanity, the High Chancellor fell. The ruler of the Dominion was dead. And with him, the empire that had ruled the stars for 1 million years collapsed. The galaxy would never be the same. With Hfy Prime in ruins, with their fleets shattered, their leaders dead or in hiding, the Dominion no longer existed. The war had ended. But what came next was something new. For the first time in history, the galaxy was free. For the first time, the Hfy were no longer the rulers of the stars. And for the first time, humanity had earned its place at the table. The war had been won. But the question remained, what would humanity do with its victory? Some demanded vengeance, the complete eradication of the Hfy species. Others saw a different path, the chance to build something better, to create a new alliance of free worlds, no longer under the Dominion's rule. The final decision fell to the survivors, to the leaders of humanity and their newfound allies. Would they become the new rulers of the galaxy? Or would they forge a future unlike anything the stars had ever seen? Humanity had once been an afterthought, a primitive race meant to be conquered. Now, they stood at the dawn of a new era. The war was over, but the story of humanity's rise had only just begun. The war was over. The Hfy Dominion, an empire that had ruled the galaxy for over 1 million years, had fallen. What was once a civilization of conquerors had been shattered from within, brought to its knees not by overwhelming force, but by the sheer will of a species that refused to kneel. Humanity had done what no other race had ever accomplished. But victory was not the end. It was only the beginning. Across the former Dominion's territory, power vacuums formed overnight. For the first time in living memory, the Hfy were not in control. Their once mighty fleets were crippled, their central government in ruins, their military fractured beyond repair. Some Hfy officers fled into exile, taking remnants of their forces with them in a desperate attempt to rebuild what they had lost. Others, those who had begun to question the war, chose a different path. They remained, seeking peace, uncertain of what a galaxy without Hfy rule even meant. And then there were those who refused to accept defeat at all. Scattered across the stars, remnants of the Dominion's elite warlords vowed revenge, rallying their followers in secret, preparing for a day when they could strike back. The war was over, but the wounds it left behind would take centuries to heal. And humanity, the species that had once fought for mere survival, now faced a choice that would define the future of the galaxy. The Resistance had won. The Dominion was broken. The galaxy was free. But what came next? For decades, humanity had fought as rebels, insurgents, warriors in the shadows. Now, for the first time, they were something else, a power in their own right. The surviving leaders of the Resistance, General Voss, Dr. Ortega, the former underground resistance cells, and their alien allies, convened on what remained of Hfy Prime. The question was simple. What happens now? The Zarin, who had waited centuries for the fall of the Hfy, urged for a new alliance, a council of free worlds to ensure that another empire would never rise to take the Dominion's place. Some humans agreed. They had fought for freedom, not power. They wanted to rebuild, to ensure that no species would ever suffer what humanity had endured. But others saw an opportunity. With the Dominion in ruins, humanity held the strongest fleet in the known galaxy. Their soldiers had fought against impossible odds and survived. Their technology had evolved at an unprecedented rate. Why should they share power when they had earned the right to rule? The debate raged across the newly formed war councils. Would humanity become the new conquerors? Or would they become the guardians of the galaxy's future? And then there was the question of the Hfy themselves. For 1,000,000 years, they had ruled without mercy. Entire civilizations had been wiped from history under their banner. Their empire had been built on slavery, destruction, and total control. Now, they were at the mercy of the very species they had tried to exterminate. The surviving Hfy leaders stood before the Human War Council, awaiting judgment. Some humans demanded vengeance, the complete eradication of the Hfy race. After all, had they not done the same to so many others? Others saw a different path. The war had already changed the Hfy. Their own people had begun to rebel, questioning everything they had once believed. If the survivors were given a chance, a choice to rebuild, to change, to integrate rather than dominate, could the galaxy avoid another cycle of endless war? In the end, humanity made its decision. The Dominion would never rise again. The Hfy, for the first time, would not be rulers, but equals, left to rebuild their own shattered world without power, without conquest. Some accepted their fate. Others vanished into the depths of space, waiting for a day when they could strike back. But one thing was clear. The era of the Hfy Dominion was over, and the era of humanity had begun. With the war over, Earth had to be rebuilt. The homeworld of humanity had suffered more than any other planet in the galaxy. Bombarded, occupied, nearly erased from existence. But humanity had survived, and now they would rise again. Cities were rebuilt. New technologies, stolen and modified from Hfy science, propelled Earth into a new golden age. What had once been a backwater world on the edge of the galaxy was now one of its greatest powers. For the first time, humanity was no longer isolated, no longer weak. They were no longer just fighting to survive. They were shaping the destiny of stars. A new order had been forged. The Galactic Concordance, an alliance of free species, was established, formed from the ashes of the Dominion, led by those who had fought for their freedom. Earth was no longer a world to be conquered. It was now a central force in galactic politics, its leaders shaping the future alongside their newfound allies. The Zarin, long hidden in the shadows, emerged as scientific and strategic leaders, guiding the new era with their knowledge. But not all was peaceful. Beyond the edges of known space, the remnants of the Dominion still lurked, biding their time, waiting for the moment to reclaim what they had lost. And deeper still, in the void beyond explored space, there were whispers of something older, something even the Viekari had feared. The war was over, but the galaxy was still dangerous, unpredictable, full of unknown threats. And humanity, once the underdogs, were ready for whatever came next. Years later, stories of the human Viekari War would be told across the stars. Some would call it the war that ended an empire. Some would call it the rise of a new power. Some would call it the moment the galaxy changed forever. But those who had fought, those who had bled for every inch of survival, knew the truth. It had never been about conquest. It had never been about dominance. It had always been about one simple truth. Humanity would not kneel. Not now. Not ever. And because of that, the future belonged to them. On the far edge of the galaxy, in the ruins of a forgotten Viekari research outpost, something stirred in the darkness. A transmission, old and corrupted, flickered to life. It was not Viekari. It was not human. It was something else. Something older. Something that had been watching all along. And as the signal spread across the void, reaching long-dormant systems, a message appeared. A single word. Awaken. The war was over. But the real battle had yet to begin.